You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again today on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, kicking off a brand new week. And before we look to the week ahead, we look back to the weekend that was, because it featured Fall Camp Scrimmage number 1, and wanted to get into some standouts with you, according to Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. And of course, also, I'm sure as many Red Raiders know by now, an unfortunate piece of news emerging from the weekend that includes news on a potential, I presume, a starter that will be lost for the year in Dylan Spencer. We'll get to that coming up in just a moment. But first, let's get back to the scrimmage and some of those standouts, according to Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire.
Guys that really stood out, Mo Horn at corner had a really great scrimmage. Ben Roberts at linebacker, Harvey Dyson at outside linebacker, Justin Horn. I was really pleased. I've been pleased with the last 3 or 4 days, or last 3 or 4 practices with Justin Horn. He's really starting to come on. And then our 6, there was 6 that played today with the 1s and 2s defensive tackles. Duda, Quincy, DB, James Hanson, Cofield, Rigsby. I mean, they were really dominant whenever it came to the first part of scrimmage. I was really pleased with that. Offensive side of the ball, Dre McCray had a really good scrimmage. Jordan Brown, I thought, had a really good scrimmage. We had some big plays with Josh Kelly once we got into the red zone lockout period. But the kid that really stood out, and it's Cam Dickey rolled his ankle in practice, so he didn't go today. And so that pushed Jacobe Williams up to get some with the 2s, and that kid is special. I mean, in the open field, he had 2 big runs of 25 and 35 yards. It was really good to see.
Obviously, Chris, when you have success for one guy or one side of the ball, they're doing it against your guys on the other side of the ball. So it's always kind of hard to know how to digest this. But he called it the most physical scrimmage that he's been a part of since he's been at Texas Tech. Sounded like the defensive line was really turning some heads, and obviously some others on both the offensive and defensive sides of the line of scrimmage.
The thing about a scrimmage, it's like an NFL preseason game, is that you want good work, good reps. You're going to be very careful about certain players on your team being made available to injury by, hey, man, you're going to get a series or 2, and then out you come. So my guess would be that a lot of the established barely played in the scrimmage on Saturday. And you're right. Anytime, and this is the thing about a red and black game, and it's just the way it is. If there's something that's really good, well, I guess that means there's something that was really bad, or and you always want it semi-balanced, but some sides of the ball have better days than others, and you don't ever know. It's never really truly known what the structure is when you do a red and black game or a scrimmage per se, in that, hey, we're just going to show you guys this, so we're not going to get into all these other packages, or, hey, we're going to blitz you a lot, even though you haven't seen it. There's just all these dynamics, and you don't really know what you're seeing, okay? If you were to watch it, or when you're listening to what Joey, you don't know exactly what the parameters were on all of it. It sounds like, though, that the defense overall was better on Saturday. However, that when you get into some of the specific red zone stuff, the offense was, I guess, handedly better. And then you factor in something like, because I think he talked about this too, I use this example for somebody that was, anytime that this kind of topic comes up, I always use this example. because Joey mentioned about Cam Brown. Well, somebody asked, "Hey, how did Cam Brown look?" Well, we don't. It's hard to tell. You don't really know because it's like I remember, and I can't remember exactly who Johnny Manziel was battling with when Cliff Kingsbury was the OC at Texas A&M, and there was two guys that were kind of battling for the QB spot, and they're playing University of Florida, and it's like one of the first SEC games for A&M. Well, it's like by the time Manziel got his turn, it was late in the first quarter, and the next thing you know, it's like he ain't ever giving that job back, and he's going nuts, right? But you can't really see any of that in practices, and that's always the best example of that. So everything that Cam Brown is good at is not really, I say good, everything. Most of what he's good at, he's in a scrimmage situation with one arm tied behind his back. He can't really do a lot of that because they're going to blow it dead. So the whole thing is tricky. Don't, like a red and black game, don't listen to Coach McGuire or just get all sideways one or the other, feel too good or bad or whatever when you hear him talk about a scrimmage and then start to form hardline opinions. Don't die on any hills from what you hear about one scrimmage on a Saturday. But there's some names in there that I think that you can start to feel pretty good about, and like we're starting to hear some of them mentioned repeatedly here, so we can get into some of those.
Yeah, I'd like to get into some of those individuals, and you're absolutely right. When the lights come on, there are certain guys, maybe all guys, but especially some of those. I mean, Manziel's a great example. Maybe Steven Sheffield is another example.
Sure.
And I'm not just trying to talk about quarterbacks, but there are guys that when the lights come on, there's just a different gear they kick into. And, of course, if you were talking about a quarterback who is improvisational or somebody that's really going to be able to extend plays, like I'm sure Patrick Mahomes looked fine in practice. But was he running for his life on 3rd and 15 and then pulling a rabbit out of the hat in practice? I don't know that scenario is really there for him, and that's maybe when he is at his most Superman-esque. So obviously it goes without saying, even though we've gone ahead and said it for those that don't know, there are things that happen in a game to really showcase a guy's ability that you just can't really work up in practice. But I am interested to hear about some of these individual standouts, and I guess I'd maybe start with one that I still don't feel like has gotten enough mention as far as general fan conversation, but it seems like he's getting a whole lot of mention as far as the coaches are concerned, and that's one Mo Horn. And you've mentioned him several times on this show as well, and it's kind of a guy that I'm having to sort of get to know and remind myself, all right, this is a name that we better remember, but he is at a spot where you are really looking for some shoes to be filled, and he's pretty consistently since the end of last year seemingly been high on the radar, at least from those in the know or those on the inside. First, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep that ride or die ride on the road or elevate your car's game to the next level of performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, accessories of all kinds to fit your style, whether it's speed, power, or design you're into. eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts to perfectly fit what you need. Just head over to ebay.com/motors, where you'll always find exactly what you're looking for and at no risk because of eBay's guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit just right every time or your money back, keeping you burning rubber and not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to keep your ride or die on the road and moving your life forward at ebay.com/motors. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions do apply. And I guess I'd maybe start with one that I still don't feel like has gotten enough mention as far as general fan conversation, but it seems like he's getting a whole lot of mention as far as the coaches are concerned, and that's one Mo Horn. And you've mentioned him several times on this show as well, and it's kind of a guy that I'm having to sort of get to know and remind myself, all right, this is a name that we better remember, but he is at a spot where you are really looking for some shoes to be filled, and he's pretty consistently since the end of last year seemingly been high on the radar, at least from those in the know or those on the inside.
It's pretty clear that he is the starter opposite of Braylon Lux. So that's not new news. That was the thought really post-spring, entering fall camp. But it's starting to become established, entrenched, Sharpie it, whatever you want to do there, as he's continued to play well. And that's a positive, because I think that there's, again, not a lot of experience there, and that's not Lux's fault. It's not Mohorn's fault either, but there's just not a lot of. He played a total of 116 snaps on defense last year. That's not a lot. You're defending, 80 to 90 plays sometimes on a Saturday afternoon, and that's the equivalent of a game and a half. There was a minor injury, this and that, and we had some folks in front of him, as we've talked about. There was 3 corners that were just older and all that. The only thing left for Mohorn to do now is to do it when it counts, because I think he's proven himself to his teammates and his coaches. Certainly his head coach has gone out of his way to point out, Mohorn. And I think that Braylon and then Mohorn have, earned a little street cred with the way that they have been as physical as they have. So that's really all that's left for him. Stay healthy the rest of camp, and now let's see what it looks like when the lights come on. But I think you're going to like the results. This is the fun part about it's scary, but it's fun. But there comes a point where the old heads are gone, and then you have to turn it over to these guys that you don't know a lot about, that were recruited 2 or 3 years ago. They've been here. They've been grinding on a daily basis. It wasn't their time yet, and they've been in the weight room. They've been sucking down protein shakes. They've been trying to either cut weight, gain weight, whatever, and we haven't seen it. And then it comes a point where your time is now. Like, okay, here's what you've been working toward or waiting on, and that's Mohorn. I mean, here you go. I mean, this is – everybody else is gone. You're here. You're next in line, and he's making the most of it.
Man, excited to see him really get a full-time kind of opportunity. And, hopefully that will be an operative phrase, in that he is making the most of it. I want to save Harvey Dyson for a moment, because he's going to factor into the conversation we're going to have at the end of the show with Dylan Spencer. But I don't know. This is, again, back in that area of, okay, we're excited about this group, but what does it mean about the group they're going up against? But it seemed like pretty heavy praise for the defensive front, particularly the interior. Coach McGuire talked about how many guys they were rolling through there. We just had a conversation about Jaden Cofield last week. He again gets a mention, but it seemed like that was a group that they were really happy with from Saturday also.
Yeah, DB Carroll, James Hanson, Quincy Ledet, Cofield, because I think Joey even said there wasn't a lot of room to run, I think was one of the things he said after the scrimmage on Saturday. Now, also, we don't know exactly what offensive line was at play, and there's been some in and out and kind of, so who knows exactly what that group looked like.
Yeah.
You already know, because he said so, Cam Dickey didn't play. And I just can't imagine that Taj Brooks was out there for too much. Meaningful anyway. There's no need. You want to get him out there, uniform, maybe give him a carry or two, just, kind of, but there's nothing else he needs to prove or anything. So with all that, that just makes you wonder about, how good what they were going against. However, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think they've been very excited about the depth of the defensive tackles, 6-7 deep. And we didn't hear the name of, like, you got Duda and you got McAlpine, and we've got the guys we've already talked about. There's just, I don't know if there's any all-conference guys in this group or draft picks in this group. However, the 1 to 6 or 7 or 8, there's not a lot of fall off. And I think that's what they've tried to view that as a positive. We can have 2 or 3 in there all the time that can give us their all. We're not asking anybody to play, 70, 80 snaps like they used to with Tony and Jalen. But yeah, so as long as we grasp context of what we may be seeing or hearing, then I think that's what you just try to factor all that stuff in. So maybe they did dominate it. But if they did, may have been a few reasons why on the other side of the ball.
Context. This is the time to overreact and draw insane conclusions, Chris, for every fan out there. Context. We don't need no stinking context. Well, maybe we do. Before we leave the defensive side, which we will circle back to, as we get to this group of outside linebackers before we're done today. Well, can you tell me about Justin Horn? He's gotten a few mentions also. I think he made his debut in the bowl game a year ago, a redshirt freshman this year. And is that a spot where I don't think he's going to be asked to do a ton of heavy lifting, but he seems like a guy that the coaches have been pretty excited about as well.
So do you remember back in I think you're the one that texted me this. I'm going to put you on the spot here because I think this was you. I think that Joey took a picture of a player in toward the end of track season.
Yes, I remember.
And you said, "Who is this with Coach McGuire?"
Yeah.
And I think I responded with, "That's Justin Horn," because you saw him and you're like, "Damn, this guy! I mean, looks like he's 30 years old. He's all like yoked up, like a grown man, and like we're like, who is this mystery man?" Well,
and apparently he's got some
speed
from New Orleans.
If
he's got track attention.
Correct. Yeah. and I think he was one of the top, outside linebackers in the country when they got him. They went to New Orleans and Louisiana area to get him. And it's funny how some of those states, because typically if you get a kid from Oklahoma and you think about all the greatness that has come to Texas Tech from Oklahoma, like from Colby Whitlock, Trey Porter, Cornelius Douglas, and we're talking about Isaac Smith now, Dadrion Taylor Demerson. There's so many great players that have played for you that have come from the state of Oklahoma. But when you get them, the assumption automatically is, well, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State didn't want them, I guess. And so, we got them. So I'm not real sure. That's a fair question to kind of wonder aloud about, but not always true, as we've heard. And I probably missed a million Oklahoma guys, Tremaine Swindoll back in the day. I mean, there's probably a million of them that I've forgotten, but you get the point.
Wes Welker.
See,
better add him. Somebody's going to get mad at us.
This is why I shouldn't have listed off a bunch of names, because inevitably I'm going to forget one or probably 20, and I'll be like, dude, you're an idiot. How did you forget? And I am an idiot. Yeah, and I am an idiot. But the same thing happens in the state of Louisiana when you talk about if they're really that good and LSU didn't get them, how good are they? Okay. Yeah. Louisiana is recruited by a lot of folks because LSU is the main institution there. Okay. Yeah, there's Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Tech. Shout out to Sonny Cumbie. There is, a few of the other smaller schools. But LSU can only take 20 to 25 of those folks there. And there are some really good players in the state of Louisiana, really good. So the SEC recruits that state heavily. But Justin Horn, I mean, this was a pretty nice recruit to get out of there. And I think he's got the speed component. And, we're kind of an outside linebacker right now, but this is the fun part about recruiting, because at some point you hope there's a payoff. Some kids there just isn't. But now you start to hear some of these names. These are some of these recruiting classes that we're young, but they're starting to knock on the door a little bit, and you're starting to hear some sophomores, some redshirt freshmen, some true freshmen stuff. And it's like, who is this guy? Like, where did he come from? Well, they were part of these recruiting classes that were ranked top 25 or top recruiting classes in the Big 12 type stuff. I mean, they've just been here and working, but you just hadn't heard their name. But it's going to happen more and more. And the introduction is starting to happen. I kind of like it.
There have been some shows that I've been on before, Chris, where I thought maybe, somebody'd tell me like, man, that show stinks. I don't like listening to it. And I'm like, yeah, how do you think I feel? I got to hear the entire thing every day. But this is not one.
We've been through several of those.
Some of that. But this is not one of those. I feel very lucky because I'm hearing the entire thing every day, because I know of guys that you have tried to put on a radar that I probably would have missed otherwise. And that's where I want to wrap up the individual part before we get to Dylan Spencer. Jacobe Williams, you have mentioned several times this offseason. Now, he's in kind of a strange position group room, because it's like semi-crowded, sort of. Maybe your best individual player on the team is in that room, but then there's also a lot of opportunity because you're looking for somebody behind Taj Brooks, whether it's Valdez or Dickey. Dickey has been very exciting. Valdez had his moments. Hoping for some better luck from a health standpoint, of course, but Dickey's been very exciting. Joey McGuire flat out said over the weekend, Cameron Dickey is not redshirting. Now, he's been a little bit banged up, rolled an ankle, as Coach McGuire mentioned there in that clip that you saw. So Williams got a little more opportunity. So maybe I'm too quick to want to get really excited about Williams, but you've mentioned him several times, and it hasn't been lost on me. And it also, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, kind of goes back to, hey, here's an example of some of this different kind of athleticism or talent that is being recruited or has been landed by Coach McGuire and his staff. So I don't know, maybe it's a byproduct of a guy in a boot with a rolled ankle, or do you really think that Williams could have something to offer this year? Because I thought that was an interesting name to hear mentioned from Coach McGuire.
So, yeah, I just think, when you look up in a couple of years, you're going to say the running back class from the 2024 class was legit, because basically you have Dickey and Williams. They're part of the same recruiting class, even though Cam Dickey was here 6 months earlier. And you kept hearing on signing day, like, these two are just different than what we've had here. Speed, but like, why I kept telling you about Williams is that if people go back and look around signing day and they see some of the Twitter activity, he's the dude, and I think he's probably listed, and Calvin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we're talking like, and Joey even said this on Saturday after the scrimmage, I think he's listed at like 5'9", 185-ish.
I think so,
okay,
yeah.
Somewhere around in there. I could be slightly off on the height or weight or whatever, but you get the idea. But this is the cat that was going through the legs, dunking it backwards, just all kinds of like freakiness, like athleticism on the basketball court. And you kept hearing with him, he's got some juice. He's got something we just don't have in that running back room. So his only challenge is, can he add enough weight, or can he be physical enough in pass protection for us to – because I'd be willing to bet you that short of an injury or whatever, their goal would be to try to redshirt him if they could. Yeah. But I bet he gets us 4 games. Mm-hmm. But I think he's going to look different when you see him carry the football, because you don't have anybody really like him. He has wiggle. He has straight line speed. He can jump. He's got he's got some juice to him. And it's just something that I don't think really Cam has that kind of thing. It's a different kind of juice with Cam because he's so much more bigger and physical. And Taj and Cameron don't have that either. But it gets to be a lot of fun when you start seeing the potential with some of these guys or hearing about it. But it's one of those things, man. It's like Blanchard, like those hurdle times, the shot put, but ability to throw a basketball down is like that triggers something that like this translates. All the 5'9".
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I was going to tell you, Tech gave him an extra inch, 5'10". Just
okay, there you go. I was close. I didn't mind this short, Jacoby. Yeah, so 5'10".
That is fun to think about the possibilities there, and I hate to bring the fun to an abrupt end to wrap up the show, but unfortunately, bad news emerging from the weekend, and I guess technically emerging from the first week of camp, but had it confirmed by Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire that Dylan Spencer lost for the season. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And summertime means baseball, burgers, and money in the bank when you're picking a winner with FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer by beating the heat with a refreshing parlay. An over-under play, or by getting the moneyline mojo working. Visit FanDuel.com and make a splash by adding a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Dylan Spencer lost for the season. Now, I mentioned we'll save Harvey Dyson for this portion because Dyson was one of those that got a mention from Coach McGuire, and he's one of those that'll be in the group that is now tasked with picking up some of the slack, but good Lord, just change the name, but repeat the talking points from a year ago. Isaac Smith on the other end as the bookend. We had to sit and wait to get back to this time of year to be excited about the possibilities. We saw Spencer last year, and we're excited again about the possibility from him individually, but we're not even going to get to see the train leave the station, unfortunately, Chris. So what did you make of the injury, and whether it's Dyson or others in addition to him, who are some of these guys we're going to have to really get familiar with that they're going to ask now to pick up some of the slack after a promising young guy that was thrown in the fire last year and was hoping to build off of that is lost for the year?
Yeah, this is the worst part of football, man, is just the injury. I hate it. It's just part of it. It sucks. Honestly, it reminds me of like the whole Isaac Smith thing from a year ago. It's like practice just starts, and it's like, dude, he was one of the guys I was most excited about last year. And then it's like, you're taking a toy away from me. And this was something that I think everybody was, and Dylan was kind of, in the same conversation. Okay, from your football team standpoint, ultimately what it does, it removes somebody with a ton of potential. We hadn't seen a lot of that potential yet, but we saw the measurables and the pedigree and how he was recruited, and he kind of got his feet wet a little bit last year. So it's not like you're losing anything that you knew you were guaranteed to get. However, the defensive end group, it doesn't have as many possibilities and explosiveness as it could have with Dylan Spencer being a part of that group. That's just I think he's somebody that had a lot of upside. Sometimes it takes a while to realize that. Some guys never do it. But I feel like your margin for error maybe is a bit smaller now without somebody like that, because I think what you're left with is some possibilities, mind you, but maybe more, even-keeled, solid players as opposed to somebody that, man, he could really be, like the NFL draft rolls around sometimes, and like some general managers, they get criticized for making the safe pick. Like, if I pick this dude, I'm not going to get fired. He may not be the best player. I'm not getting fired, because he's just going to be safe. He's going to be a solid NFL player. And it's like, well, he wasn't a bust. Other general managers, they screw it. I'm rolling the freaking dice, because if he's like a Pro Bowler or this or that, I not only will get a second contract, but I'll be fighting off, that my owner is going to have to fight off other teams for wanting to hire me away. And I'm gambling, but I'm gonna, and I think that you're left with some of the middle ground, like safe players without as much upside. Because like Charles Esters, nobody works harder. He's just really solid. At his best, though, I don't think he can be anywhere near what Dylan Spencer potentially could be. But Charles Esters, like at his worst, is really good still, if that makes sense. Like he's just solid. And so that's kind of I'm probably trying to talk about it in terms of like what could have been, and then you some of that what could have been has been taken away from you a little bit before you got going. But yeah, the cover's not bare by any means.
Still will have a redshirt year available. I think he was one of 4 or maybe 3 that did not take a red shirt last year as far as true freshmen are concerned. So it was one of those things where I think I've actually said this about him this offseason, in that you hope some of the pain of last year and having to throw a true freshman in like you did would pay off as you get into a sophomore year, but we're not going to have a chance to realize that potential at least this time around. So thinking about Dylan Spencer, unfortunate news for him. Hopefully back and better than ever the next time around. And obviously some big-time competition now set to play out as far as filling those shoes is concerned. And speaking of competition, we'll be back on the other side tomorrow. I want to get a little bit further into some of the battles that are raging at some really key spots. We'll touch on a few in tomorrow's episode. We'll hear again from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. So looking forward to that with you, Chris. Thanks for the time today, man. Enjoyed it as always.
Enjoyed it. Tough talking about injuries, but maybe now we get more of the name Amir Washington, which we saw a lot of possible, good stuff there in the bowl game and all that stuff. So anyways, but that's the opportunity knocks, man. You got to be ready to answer it. But we'll talk to you everybody tomorrow.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Sports, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, of course, on YouTube or also anywhere you get podcast. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.